Daf Sadi Amud Aleph at the end, Tashma. Last line, they asked a question to Shmuel regarding the same concept of whether or not if I start the Isur but I don't finish off the Isur, or if a goy does the Isur for me, who's Chayav? Right, we had the question with muzzling the animal. So Halen today, we have bulls. My non-Jewish friends, quote unquote, steal them from me. I say for me because what they do is they castrate them for me and they give it back. Why is that a big deal? Because you're not to castrate animals in Midoraita. Now, what if my friends, my non-Jewish friends, steal them, quote unquote, and then they give it back to me? What's the halacha? We answer them, you're playing games, you're trying to do trickery to God. Now you have to sell them. He's penalizing them. He's forcing them to sell them. They followed this halacha. Wait, so that was a proof that we see. Sorry, point was we see that if you tell a non-Jew to do an isur d'Rabbanan, to do an isur, it's still asur. Even if it's not Shabbat like we thought, right? If we thought maybe it's only limited to Shabbat, but maybe other things wouldn't be a problem. You see over here, Amirah Lagoy is a problem. It's not a problem. They had like a hidka that ma bnei Noach mitzuvin ala sirut. It's different because bnei Noach, all people are hayab regarding castrating. They're not allowed to do it. Therefore, you're making them over on the tnei iver regarding this avera, and that's why you were forced to selling it. But maybe muzzling the animal would not be part of that situation. Maybe Rabbi says you have to sell them specifically to be slaughtered, which is a bigger knas. Not for plowing, because now that it's castrated, the point of castrating is that it plows better. Plows it feel better. So maybe if you sell it for slaughtering, it's a bigger knas instead of selling it for plowing, which would be more profitable. No, you could sell it for plowing. It's enough that you forced them to sell it in the first place, and they could sell it for plowing. So the Gemara says, so now we here to sell it to someone else. Now, obviously, if you sell it to your adult son or 13-year-old son, that's considered like someone else. What's the halacha if you transfer it to your minor son? Is that considered transferring to yourself or not? These two rabbis actually had an incident with two tzaddikim who had another person, a goy, castrate the animals, and they just exchanged the animals between themselves instead of going through the knas via selling. What's the halacha if you don't actively muzzle it, but you put a thorn in its mouth, so now it can't chew, it won't eat it? You're indirectly muzzling it. The Gemara says, that's just a fancy way of muzzling it. You didn't put a muzzle, but you stopped it from eating it, same thing. The Gemara says, okay, what's the halacha if a thorn landed in there by itself? It happened by itself. You didn't actively muzzle it. Different question. What if you put in a lion outside where the food is to stop her from eating? Is that considered muzzling? If it's a yeah, that's straight up muzzling. What's the question? Okay, same thing. What if the lion is there? Do you have to chase the lion away, or you could leave it as is, so that it's not considered? So even though it's indirectly muzzling it, what if you put her baby outside, so it'll be distracted and won't eat? What if it's thirsty and therefore it won't eat? Is that considered muzzling it directly? What if you put a cloth on top of all the fruits, then now it can't eat? Is that considered muzzling? The answer isn't fine. We see that the owner of the cow let us starve his cow so she can eat a lot of fruits while it's being rented out to someone else. When the owner can put hay on top of the fruits, so the animal can't eat the fruits. So we see similarly that you're able to cover and muzzle the animal indirectly by covering the food. Remember, says Shani Hatim, the Gaha is different though. He's eating the hay. He's able to eat something. That's not considered muzzling. So maybe it's not a good proof. We see, and a different answer saying that it's not a good proof is because we see there also they let to untie and block the food directly with the hay, so you won't eat a lot of it. So we see from here that we don't have an answer either way, but it wasn't a good proof to say that you're able to indirectly muzzle the animal. What if you muzzle the animal outside? and then you bring it inside to your field. Short bidisho machana v'hala bidisho. That pasuk says you can't muzzle the ox while it's threshing. Over here, it wasn't threshing yet. Or maybe maybe the Torah is just telling you don't thresh the animal while it's muzzled, and then it would be asur even if you muzzle it from before. So the question is, if I pre-muzzle it before it starts threshing, is that asur or not? I can answer you from your own father's halacha. Pasuk says, "Yain v'shechar al tasht ata v'necha itach b'lu'achem." The Torah says to Aaron HaKohen, you and your children should not have wine while you're inside the ohel moed. B'lu'achem hu da'asur v'mishteh mechal shareh. You sound like you're able to drink from before. I can't drink in the oil, maybe I could drink from before. The Gemara says, ben hakodesh ben hachol. Make sure you differentiate, you separate yourself from kodesh to chol. And therefore, therefore teaching you, don't have the wine in your system. Don't be intoxicated when you're coming to Omohed. Lav dafka, it doesn't have to be necessarily when you're inside only. It's not like we prove from here as well regarding muzzling. It can't be muzzled while inside the threshing. Whether or not you pre-muzzled it or not, it will still be asur. If I muzzled the cow but didn't thresh it, or let's say I did kill ayim animal, which means I mixed two animals together. It's asur to have two animals mixed together while plowing, usually because they have different eating schedules and chewing its cuds. They'll get jealous of each other. So you're not to have two animals tied to the same wagon to plow. That's considered a part of a type of kilayim. Now, what if I tied it to the animals together, but I didn't lead them to plow? The second guy who does it takes the muzzled animal or takes the two animals together that are kilayim, he gets malkut. So we see the person who actually does the isur chayav, and not like earlier, we said earlier that someone else who does it would be patur. We see from here that the guy who actually does the actions chayav, even if someone else did the initial problem. Let's say the guy who makes the animal, he's muzzled, and he makes the animal, the animal's not muzzled physically, but every time the animal bends down to eat, he stops the animal from eating by screaming at it with his voice. Or the animals were kilayim mixed together, and he's making them plow by making them walk together by yelling at it. It's not considered leading it or making it eat or making it muzzled. Yochanan says verbal action is considered action. He says that verbal is not considered action. I have a question. You say verbal is not considered action? In Timura, you're not to have an animal that you made hekdesh. If I made Bessie the cow hekdesh and I want to trade it off to a different animal, I can't transfer it. If I make the second animal hekdesh, I'm chayav. I want to transfer it, substitute the animal. If you do try to verbally do it, you are chayav malkut. So we see that malkut is chayav even on something that's verbal. Question against Rakish, who holds that Rakish says that verbal is not considered a maaseh. He holds that a lav without an action is chayav malkut over there. When we say about we can second that Braita can't be referring to Rabbi Yehuda because that Mishnah can be referred because the first part of that Mishnah specifically said anybody's chayav, men or women. What is it? What is the word hakol? All to include the inheritor. Regarding the person who inherits an animal from his father, his father made the Bessie the cow hektish, the child can also make the animal substitute. He's also chayav to that. It's against Rabbi Yehuda. The Rabbi Yehuda holds that an inheritor can substitute the animal. The inheritor can't lean on the animal that the father made hekdesh. So we see from here that the beginning is not Rabbi Yehuda. So now we're saying the second part is Rabbi Yehuda. Where it says, "Hi, yes, the Tana the Mishnah and Timura brought down two halachot, one that was like Rabbi Yehuda, one was not like Rabbi Yehuda." Okay, someone muzzled the cow and he threshes with it, he's chayav malkut. He pays 4 calves if he rented the cow and 3 calves for the donkey. So I rented a cow from Joe. I took his cow. It's my responsibility to feed the animal, and I muzzled it. So not only am I chayav malkut for muzzling the cow, like midoraita is isur, I also have to pay the animal owner that I'm renting it from the feed that I was supposed to receive, which is 4 per cow or 3 for a donkey. Is the Braita. You can't receive 2 punishments for the same thing. You can't receive malkut and die for the same crime, and you can't receive malkut and pay money. So how can you say you're chayav? Gemara says a few answers. That's contra Meir. That malkut and money you can do, malkut and death you can do, you can't. And that's why over here, because malkut and money you can do. Different answer. We had this concept before that a person can't use money that was used to buy a zunah, to hire a zunah, even if you, let's say, used an animal. You gave an animal to a zunah as payment. So that's considered a zunah's wage. Even if he gave it to his mother to have incest with him, in that scenario, it would still be considered a zonah's wage, even though he's chayav mitah for living with his mother. So we see over there that the transaction still goes through, and even though you can't necessarily force the son to pay the mother because it's not a good transaction, but still considered the mother says, "Oh, my son didn't pay me for this." We can't force the son to pay because in our eyes, not a good transaction. However, if he does give it to her, it's still considered the wage, and you still can use it. You can't use it as a korban again because of that. So we see that certain things are chal, like this case over here as well, regarding the threshing, you'll be chayav and double. Rabbi says no. Usually the same crime can't be chayav money and malkut, but over here it happened in different times. You're chayav to pay or feed the animal the second you took it out of the owner's possession. And therefore, when you brought it to your field, you already chayav in feeding it, and then you decided to muzzle it, then you're chayav malkut. That's two separate types. They asked me two questions, particularly and I said they're both asur. One question they asked me, they're pasuk like me, and one question was not, they're pasuk like me. What's the cases? Am I allowed to knead bread with milk? Can I make dairy bread? I said it's asur. You should not knead dough with milk. And if you do it, it's all asur because it might lead to avira. You might lead it to use with milk. Additionally, similarly, you can't grease the oven with the fat of the tail of a sheep, which is chelev. Chelev is isur fats. Isur fats is not considered meat, but you still can grease the oven. And if you do it, you're not allowed to use the bread that was there until you burn away the fat from the oven. Okay, that was his halacha, that he's a sur, that they were pasuk like a bidah. But another question they asked for me. Can I put two different types of animals in the same pen? Maybe a stable, you want to put a donkey and a horse together. I know I'm not allowed to mate them, because that's considered kilayim, but am I allowed to mix them together in the pen? And whatever they do, they do. I said that's a sur, which they were not pasuk with me. And they're pasuk like Shmuel. Because why? In Shmuel, they say witnesses, when they're testifying adulterers, they don't actually have to physically see the actual specific act of penetration happening, but rather all they have to do is see the act happening, even though they can't see all the details. So just the fact that they're lying together. In the case of kilayim, the only time you're chayav for kilayim regarding two animals is if you are physically helping the male put it into the female. The euphemism they have here is like putting a tube into the lipstick, right? So meaning the one thing going into A going into B. If the pasuk only said don't mate your animal, you might think that means you can't hold down the female animal by the horns to hold it down while the male goes on top of her. Therefore, the pasuk says kilayim to teach you that you're not allowed to do that. You're not allowed to help mating animals by kilayim, by mixing animals. It's a sort. It sounds like by kilayim you can't hold the female animal at all. Gemara says no. The isur by kilayim is specifically what? My holding the female animal. Helping the male inserting it. What are they holding? Holding sounds like just holding down the female. Holding down the female is getting involved, but not fully involved. The reason why we said holding the animal is a euphemism, but in the halacha is regarding kilayim. The Isur of Kilayim by animals, mixing animals is physically helping the animal, the male, penetrate the female. That's the Isur Duraita. Amen.